So I'm very excited to announce that on this brand new channel, which I'm doing, which is the Isolation Interviews, I've named it. And on my first edition of the show, I'm very excited to be joined by the fantastic Mike Bushell. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, pleasure, Matthew. Lovely to see you. And great idea. And I love the title. The Isolation Interviews were very good.
Yeah, so it took me a little while to come up with a title that wasn't too long and that kind of explained what it was all about. So I hope I've managed to crack it, and I hope that it all works out well. But yeah, thank you for joining me. And I imagine for you, I mean, tell us a little bit about how the whole lockdown has affected you, because you're still able to obviously go to work. So how's that working for you?
Well, the initial couple of weeks were a bit strange. I was at Cheltenham for the festival, the racing festival, which at the time we were talking about whether it would be the last big public event, and indeed that's proved to be the case. And after that, on the Tuesday, my wife Emily had some mild cold symptoms, and because someone in the house had mild cold symptoms, then I had the duty to let work know, BBC in Salford, and it was a case of going into family isolation for a couple of weeks. I then had a few symptoms on Friday, but I wouldn't say it was anything like coronavirus. It wasn't even a cold. It was a bit weird, but it certainly wasn't very severe. We were very lucky if it was coronavirus to have it that mildly. But anyway, whatever it was, it passed within a day, and we self-isolated. Then have been back in Salford. But I've been making pieces, TV pieces, using Zoom, Skype, house party apps, by doing interviews remotely and filming myself, rather than relying on a camera operator. So that's been a little bit different. And also then coming to Salford and Media City and the studios itself, that's been a bit different as well, because I'm not on the breakfast sofa for self-distancing reasons. I have to be on the ground floor, whereas the other presenters are on the sofa at either ends of the sofa. That's been a bit of getting used to as well. And there's only a skeleton staff in to run the sports bulletins. And the editor of the sports bulletins that morning sits again probably 3 meters away, and then doing interviews back in the room with Zoom and Skype again. So I've just interviewed John Barnes from his house. He just got stuck in a shopping queue at Tesco's and was back home, about players' wages and subjects like that. And that was done again via the internet, a way we're not used to working before, but I'm sure it will. It'll prove to be a successful way after this, as one of the few positive things to come out of this whole coronavirus, the fact that you can work in different ways.
I was going to say, going forward, this potentially could be a new way of, people doing interviews, not having to necessarily travel into the studio or whatever. Do you think this could be, once, lockdown finishes, once the coronavirus is gone, do you think this is something that we'll still use in the future?
I think so. I think it could be a really useful tool to have, because obviously sometimes it's much better to go with a camera person and yourself, and then you can do the filming with someone at home rather than having to film themselves, and the quality is always better. But if needs be, and if it does help ease traffic congestion, pollution, for more of us to work like this from home and have meetings, certainly, rather than going into the office and, as I say, clogging up the roads and reducing pollution, then that might be a beneficial thing to come out of it, a legacy to come out of this whole sorry episode.
Now, obviously, with everyone is stuck at home, it's a very kind of strange time that we're in at the moment, because no one can, you've got a lot of things being cancelled, and obviously a lot of sport has been cancelled. So for you, it must mean that there is a lot less for you to report on, do you find?
Well, I thought that, but initially we're still in the first 3 weeks, of course, of isolation, and the stories keep coming thick and fast. Of course, we're not reporting on the actual sport that is happening, which is few and far between. I think it's the Belarusian Football League is one of the few bits of action still be continuing, but we're reporting about all the stories about how sport is responding, sporting figures and bodies are responding to the coronavirus, not only the cancellation of events, but how sporting authorities can affect and help families. Certainly we've seen football clubs reach out to families and those vulnerable in the communities, whether it be with phone calls from players and managers, or cooking food like at Southampton for players, for fans that may be in need and more vulnerable and isolating. And we've seen how sports have had to look after themselves in terms of getting their own finances in order, because it's going to be a difficult time for any sport, whether it be football, athletics. And so we've seen the whole issue of sports clubs furloughing, putting staff, obviously the non-playing and the non-performing staff, on reduced wages and leave and deferring wages. So there's been so much to report on there. It's all new territory. We haven't really reported stories like this before. So it has kept us really, really busy, strangely enough. Whether that will tail off, depending on how long isolation lasts, we don't know. But the whole business of sport is really fascinating. It's opening up, and we've seen just today how Wimbledon itself, we're set to lose a lot of money through the coronavirus cancellation of Wimbledon this year, the Lawn Tennis Association, the All England Club. But they've told everyone that they took out insurance back in 2003 after the SARS epidemic, and that's really helped protect them now. They can have some of that insurance money to help them get them through. So every sport's got its own story to tell. Obviously, we're seeing so many events cancelled, but then there are still some events that are holding on to some sort of hope. We heard this week about Royal Ascot having an ambition to go ahead, if they're allowed to by the government, behind closed doors. And then also the anniversary athletic games, still clinging on to hope that they might be able to go ahead in July. But of course, that then could clash with West Ham if the Premier League is back up and running, because they use the same former Olympic stadium. There are so many issues to report on as yet. Okay, it has got a little bit quieter, and it's not the normal sport we're used to reporting on, but there's still been so much to say and so much to research and so many talking points, whether it be the footballers maybe not taking a wage cut as yet, instead coming up with this collective initiative fund to give money directly to the NHS rather than having it deducted from the pay, because the concern is there that would mean tax cuts, reduced taxes, and so maybe, ironically, less money coming into the NHS that way. So there's been so many new issues to get our heads around.
Because that's the other thing that you said, is that there's going to be, obviously at the moment everything's cancelled and stopped. There's going to be a point when they're going to start doing those events again, but they're all going to be on top of each other. And how's it? I feel sorry for whoever's got to schedule all these events around one another.
Oh, that is going to be a big challenge, yes, especially, as you say, if it all comes back at once. I suppose it depends on how long the isolation and the shutdown, the sporting shutdown, goes on for. I mean, some events have been cancelled for the year, so Wimbledon won't happen until 2021, nor will the whole grass court season. Other events like the French Open have been postponed, so put back until the autumn. So you could have potentially the US Tennis Open and the French Open back to back. It depends when the sporting shutdown resumes or finishes, and so sport can resume, how many events are coming thick and fast. But you're certainly talking about a very, very busy 2021, and unprecedented in terms of things to cover, because everything's going to be happening, isn't it? From the European Championships. Oh my goodness, it's going to be such a crazy year. But we'll all be starved of sport by then. So we'll be
I think 2020 will go down as the year where we just kind of thought, we gave up on that year and we moved on to 2021. Yeah. Now, in terms of, obviously, you're back at work and you're out of self-isolation. In terms of the sort of travelling to and from work, are you kind of trying your best to keep safe? Are you worried about, obviously, because trying to keep 2 meters apart and all this? So have you kind of worked out how it's going to work for you?
Yes, yeah, quite simply. I'm not really getting close to anybody. I'm not taking public transport. I'm using my own car to travel up the motorway, which has still been relatively busy with lorries, understandably, delivery trucks, but not as many cars. And then staying in Media City on my own in a room all day. I go into work. The closest I probably come to someone is when I go through the security doors. They're about 3 meters away, the security staff. And then the other person on with me sits 3 meters away. I get up, turn on the camera, do my little bit into breakfast program, which is upstairs, 2 floors. And that's it. That's as close as you come to anyone. Where I'm staying, you don't see anybody. There's some NHS workers staying here, but you don't see them. You're shut in your rooms, and that's it. There's no restaurant, there's no bar. Obviously, there's no. I might go to the supermarket to get some bits of food, and different supermarkets tend to be. It varies on how good they are at social distancing. Some are quite strict, others less so. But yeah, I'm very careful, and if someone's coming down the aisle in the supermarket towards me, I'll go the other way, because if it doesn't look like they're going to move, which has happened, incredibly. But yeah, I'm very aware that I'm not coming into contact with anybody.
Because it is, like I was saying earlier, it's a very strange time. We're finding that a lot of people are, they're probably more in contact with people over things like Skype and Zoom and like FaceTime even. But there's a lot of people that are very lonely and that are not seeing people. They're maybe not up to date with technology, or they're just missing that human contact, that giving their friend or their family member a hug. So, I mean, are you finding that a very strange experience?
Yes, I think I'm lucky. I was married with a stepson who I do see when I'm in isolation at home, but I haven't seen my three daughters who are slightly older now. But normally I'd see them twice a week, three times a week sometimes. But because they live in a different house, obviously I can't see them at the moment. We're talking on Skype and Zoom and house party apps. That has been strange, but I do feel for the people that are on their own and how long they can really go on surviving isolation. I mean, there have been great initiatives with the likes of my parents in their 70s. They stay isolated. They've learnt about new technology. They've learned how to go on Zoom. They've now learned how to join Zumba classes, social groups online, so they're not actually in the same room with them. There's so much that I've learned as well. I mean, I went for a run with the Chippenham Harriers. Obviously not with them, but we all did our separate 5K runs, and then we joined in a virtual pub in the evening. Normally they'd go to a real pub in Wiltshire, but everyone joined in their living rooms with sandwiches, beers, and everyone joined and chatted about their runs on the multi-screen, Celebrity Squares. And then there's been some brilliant initiatives to get people out of the houses, even though they're lonely, isolated people. You've seen the exercise class in Kensington where one of the residents sends out a playlist the night before, and then all the residents on the street come out onto their doorstep because the doorsteps are far enough apart, and does the routine so they can actually see other people, but obviously they're not near other people. So there have been great initiatives, and the music events. I've seen bingo played in one street where everyone has the windows open and there's a loudspeaker, and the chap's there calling numbers out through his window. And initiatives like that are really important, keeping people occupied and combating loneliness, because physically we may not be able to have any contact with people, but I think there's been more contact on things like Zoom and Skype, and there are ways to combat loneliness, and we've got to take them. And so many classes now, you can do yoga, Pilates, everything online if you want to. The number of quizzes I've done as well. That's a great way, again, of just getting to know new people and feeling involved and combating that sort of sense of being shut in.
I know that a lot of like musical artists are doing concerts,
Yeah.
concerts. I know that a few of the Strictly guys have been doing bits and pieces, online. Joe Wicks has been doing exercises. It's a real kind of. I think everyone is just really coming together. And although the whole coronavirus is a bad thing, I would say there is good, not the virus itself, but there's good things that come out of it. And I hope going forward that people will take that with them, and that after we get out of this, I hope that it will have brought us as a country and as a world closer together.
I think there's definitely aspects that will help with that. The fact that people realise now you can do all these things online, and if you live in a flat, you can turn, thanks to gymnasts like Max Whitlock, you can turn your living room into a gym using the sofa, using the coffee table, follow his safety guidelines, and they don't have to be complicated exercises. There's one you can do standing up on one leg from the sofa that I've learned from Max. And I think it's been a great way as well for sporting people and as you say, people like the Strictly professionals to engage with the audience and the fans, much more personal level. And I think you're right. I think it will bring communities together. I think there'll be street parties when it's all over. And and the world as well. You've seen, I mean, I was just watching this piece on BBC News the other day about gangs in South Africa, how there's now a truce and it's brought the gangs together. And they're all united in one cause. So I think there'll definitely be elements of that, bringing the world and bringing people together, communities, neighbours, even on a small scale. I think that will definitely happen because of the way we've had to try and look after the vulnerable. And also, it's been fantastic to see the reaction to the NHS. I've felt for a long time that teachers and nurses and doctors have been undervalued, and this is really going to help really boost their profile, hopefully, their morale, and really get the recognition and the pay they deserve long term, I guess.
Now let's go back to last year, because obviously Strictly was a big part of your life last year. And I mean, first of all, how did that come about for you? How did you get to join the cast?
Well, I suppose they're looking for people that are maybe slightly different in their roles. So because I've been doing all these pieces on a Saturday morning, these sporting challenges, they thought probably that I'd be one up for a challenge on Strictly, and really to test me to see how I could cope with the physical and the mental demands of dancing and the shock that it was. And then they just call you up and ask you, and of course you don't want to turn that down. And then that's in June. You keep it secret for a while. Then in August you first meet up with the group. They're very good at easing people in, so it's not too much of a shock. You all meet up with the group. You do a group dance. You get paired up with your partner. It's then announced who it's going to be, because they do a whole process almost like dance dating, where you dance around the room with everybody and they're videoing you on iPads, and then they decide behind closed doors who you're going to be partnered with, and then you find out on the show. And then you get 2 weeks to learn the first dance with your partner, and that's when the physical pain really comes in. That's when you have to push through the mental barriers. But you've got 2 weeks for that first dance, and so it's all about breaking you in gently. And by the third, fourth week, you are picking up dances much quicker. You have more to do, because sometimes there's a group dance as well, and you take it on board quicker, and your body adapts. And because you've lost weight probably by this point, you've sweated off all those pounds as well, it does get easier. Obviously, there's still the mental pressure and the worry and the fear and the nerves you get before each live performance on a Saturday night, but it does get easier, and it's an incredible experience. It was the most incredible thing I've ever done. The biggest challenge probably I've ever done, certainly physical wise. I don't think people really appreciate how physical and what athletes, dancers are. I'd say they're up there with the top sports in the world. Plus they've got the mental side rather, and obviously have to do it very quickly to music. But they really are such tough athletes. Their bodies are highly tuned, and really, they withstand great pain, and they shake off injuries quickly if they get an injury. It was a real insight.
Had you had any advice from anyone who had done it previously about you going in, or were you kind of not wanting to kind of get too many people giving you their sort of advice?
Oh yes, no. People had said, Stacey Dooley told me before, and Nagaman, just be yourself. Leave any ego at the door. Hopefully, I'm not too much of an ego anyway, but leave anything like that at the door. Listen to the teacher. In my case, Katia, your partner. Do what they say. Put the hours in, and when I mean hours, you're talking 7:30 in the morning to 9, 10 at night, Monday to Thursday, and really put the hours in. Physically be a struggle, but you get used to it, as I said. So just go through that pain barrier. Try and just be patient and just work at it, stick at it. Leave any pretenses or any ego at the door when you walk in, so that if you are going to get the judges criticising you, but just take that on board and learn from that. They're trying to help. And just enjoy it, enjoy the ride, enjoy that experience, enjoy that buzz on a Saturday night when you, hopefully by that point, you're comfortable enough to go out and do the dance live, and hey presto, it just happens. You focus on that moment, concentrate, and the next 90 seconds go by like that.
What would you say is maybe the one lesson you learned from taking part in Strictly?
Yes, good question. I suppose the lesson is, just to not let nerves get the better of you, not to fear things. Because if you put the work in, you can overcome anything. And I suppose the one lesson was that anybody can really do anything if they put their mind to it, with the right teaching, the right coaching. Cassie always says this: she can work with anybody. People that haven't danced before, like myself, really, she can get them believing and achieving what you think would be impossible. And so I'd say just to realise your dreams and think, actually, nothing's impossible. You go for it, put the energy in, put the work in, take the knocks, but listen to the advice of those teaching you or coaching you, and you'll get there.
And did you have any sort of expectations going into the show, or did you have any kind of goals that you wanted to sort of gain from the show?
I wanted to get fitter, definitely, which worked for the time being. I wanted to be able to deal with the pressure of those sorts of situations, and learn to dance, see how I could, whether I could remember a dance and get better at sort of shaking the hips and stuff. I had no expectations to how far we'd go as the oldest man in the competition. And the bookies had me a favourite to go home the first week. So anything after that was always going to be a bonus, really. And it was a case of focusing on it each week at a time. First of all, the jive. All you can do is put the hours in, do your best, and try to remember what Katie has told you. If you go wrong on the night, it doesn't really matter, as long as you do your best and try and be honest with yourself and just be yourself. If you do that, then if you go home week 1, week 2, you can hold your head up high. So, I went past much further than I thought I would, and probably most people thought we would, to get to week 8, to have 10 weeks solid of doing it was an incredible experience and beyond any expectations.
And also you were very lucky in that you had a great group of fellow celebrities taking part in the series with you. So when you're doing things like, the live shows, or when you're going out on tour with them, it must be nice to know you had a great group with you that you could gel with.
Oh, absolutely. That's so important, and you do feel so reassured because everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's getting nervous backstage. Everyone's worried that they'll make a mistake or forget things, but everyone cheers you on, reassures you all the time. Not just the other celebrities, if you don't want to use that word, but also the other professionals. Even if they're paired with someone else, they might be paired with your so-called rival, but they'll be offering tips all the time. Improve your posture, Ali Ash would always help me with my stance and my ballroom frame, even though he was working with Emma Weymouth, the Countess Emma Weymouth. And so everybody would be so supportive and reassuring, and people have gone wrong in the past, and it doesn't matter as long as you try your hardest, and everyone was rooting for you. And backstage it was like a big family. No one wanted to lose anyone each week, but of course that's part of the show, part of the game, if you like. But it was awful when someone did go, but everyone was in it together.
So yeah, so have you been able to keep up with all the dancing? Have you made an effort to make sure that you're keeping up with it all?
I wish I could say I was doing more. Yes, Matthew, I did the tour, and that was a great way of keeping the dancing going. I had to get back into it after Christmas, but after the tour finished, had a bit of a holiday, did a bit of dancing on there, but not all day long, not the intensity, not the fitness that I'd like. And then back to the day job, reporting on other things. It's been difficult to find the time. I do occasionally go through the routines in the kitchen or even on the patio in the back garden, but not as much as I'd like. And then, of course, the weight starts to come back on and it gets harder. But I can still remember the dances. I'm still doing the moves. And occasionally I've done one of the dances online in isolation. I'd like to go back to a dance class when it all finishes. But, of course, in isolation, we can't do it at the moment. But online, there are often really good ones like the Alpha Puff Daddies in Brighton, which I'll be doing next Wednesday. And I've joined my mum's Zumba class online as well via Zoom. So not as much as I like, but, yes, I have been keeping a little bit going.
I mean, that's the other good thing with obviously going back to the whole, the situation we're in at the moment is that a lot of people have found that they've had more time to reflect on things, to do exercise. I mean, I was able to sort out a few rooms in my house, so they were very cluttered and now they're a lot cleaner. So it just gives you that time to do things.
Yes, it does. I moved into a new house last August and still kept stuff in an old lockup nearby, a farmer's lockup. So I've been able to clear that and move stuff into the loft. I haven't got a big garden, but it was a new garden, brand new build. And so I planted plants because you can still get deliveries and done a bit of the garden. So, yeah, I'd never have had the time or the space or the inclination, I suppose, to do that in the past if I was out filming somewhere, because it'd be a lot more working from home. It does give you more chance because you're not spending so much time travelling around. So that has been a real bonus. Yes, indeed.
Now, I thought what we'd have a little chat about is, because, I mean, a lot of people won't know how you and me actually first came to meet.
Yes.
So, I mean, would you like to share how we came to kind of get to know each other?
Well, yes, it was back in November, wasn't it? At the Sophie Ellis-Bextor concert. I think either you in front or...
So you were in the row in front of us. And
That's
it was
right.
The Basingstoke Anvil, which is a lovely theatre.
Yeah. And it was a great night and a great concert. And then we started chatting afterwards, and you told me about your links with Sophie, and it was a fantastic, really good gig, and it was superb. Yeah, really enjoyed it. And I know you've been to quite a few of them. And I'm just glad we got in there before the shutdown and this virus came on, because otherwise, like many other things, that would have been cancelled, and we might not have seen that and seen each other.
Exactly. It was a kind of, I think it was the last, for me anyway, the last concert I was able to go to before everything happened.
Me too, yeah.
It was such I mean, if anyone's ever seen Sophie live, or even if you haven't seen Sophie live, thoroughly recommend, once you get the chance, go and see her, because she is fantastic. She, obviously does all the hits. She's got a fantastic band with her. And I believe she's actually at the moment been doing a few Instagram concerts. So I would thoroughly recommend check those out. But yeah, I mean, how did you come to get into her music?
Well, actually, I mean, I've obviously grown up in the 90s listening to her. And then I've seen her a couple of times at Carfest and at various little festivals. I'd always thought she'd been really good at stealing the show, really getting the crowd involved. And so, yeah, just a few friends from the village. We live nearby to where Carfest South is. We just said we'd go along when she was coming again locally to Basingstoke. And this was a bit different because I think the first half, it was the orchestral versions of her song, which was fantastic, really beautiful, really moving, and some new stuff as well. And then the second half was all about the hits, getting everyone dancing in the aisles. So it was like a concert of two halves, a bit different because with the first half, which I really enjoyed though. The orchestral bits, then into the rocky stuff.
I was going to say it was lovely to just see her doing her the hits with a different feel. But then she still did the disco, which I think everyone knows and loves her for the pop disco.
Yeah, the groove.
She really does know how to put a party on.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. She's always been, burning the dance floor says it all, doesn't it? In terms of getting everyone up onto the dance floor, doesn't matter how you're going to dance, it makes you get up. Groove Jet just makes you get up. It's hard to resist. It's your feet tapping and then the rest of the body following suit. But yeah, she's got such a great voice, and to to hear that really come to life in the first half when the orchestra was special before everyone was itching to get up and have a dance as well.
And then at the very end, she also did an a cappella song where she sang just no mic, nothing.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about that because that was amazing. She'd sort of gone off the stage and you thought that'd be it, and then you'd hear this voice and you think, is that recording? And then absolutely no microphones and just pure voice from different parts as well of the theatre. So I think she appeared in the circle with just next to people who were just staggered, and her voice carried across the whole anvil. It was incredible. That really was a real highlight, actually. I'm really glad you mentioned that.
I mean, I got goose pimples just watching that part of the show, just because it really did show off her amazing voice. So yeah, totally. I'm thoroughly looking forward to getting back out to be able to see more live music, because I think it's one of those things that it just, no matter how you're feeling, it'll always put you in a good mood.
Totally, you can't beat a live concert, and I love seeing different ones. You know, you go to these festivals and see them all lining up one after another, but it's nice to see a whole evening with someone like with Sophie. And as you say, I've never seen that, I don't think, before. The unique way she popped up in different parts of the theatre at the end, surprising. It was just a surprise, and then opens her voice, and yeah, it was special. You get things like that when you go and see gigs. You get surprises because, yeah, you go to a festival and see them one after the other, but they're just allowed only a small slot. But you then see their concert, and you get so much more, and you get to know them more as well because they chat with you and, you know, the audience. So you can't beat a live gig. I mean, it's nice that they're doing. It's great that they're doing. So artists like Sophie are doing these online concerts because it's a great way of keeping in touch with them. But you can't beat the real thing.
Now, I'd just like to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me on my first edition of Isolation Interviews. I just want to say to everyone watching at home, you can, of course, hit the subscribe button. I'll be having more chats with more people as and when they're available. So, yeah, keep an eye out. And again, Mike, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, Matthew, anytime. I'd love to speak to you again at some point. Good luck with it.
Definitely.
Thanks so much. Take care.